Welcome today. You're in for a special treat with these authors that have written this wonderful book, The Caregiver Chronicles. We are so pleased to allow them to share their stories to help you as a resource in your caregiver journey, and they all have their own unique stories to share. So I really would like to thank Kensington Senior Living, and I would like to thank the authors of The Caregiver Chronicles, and without further notice, we're going to have them introduce each other, and I'm going to start with Paolina.
Woohoo! Hey, applause! Where's the applause? Thank you. So my name is Paolina Milana. I put together this book thanks to a grant from the Paolina Family Foundation in Orange County. And 21 family caregivers signed up to tell their stories in a chapter. Each one decided to author a chapter, some for the first time writing. So this is really a big deal. The stories are beautiful. We've gotten some great reviews, and we're so grateful that Kensington has invited us here. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you who have shown up. Before we actually get started, I want to ask a question of the audience. Couple questions maybe. Number one, who here was not born yesterday? Okay, yay, there you go. Okay. Who here has been a caregiver, is a caregiver, anticipates they're gonna be a caregiver, or is wondering what happens when they need care? All of us, right? That's from a quote from Rosalind Carter. And it is so true. Every one of us is going to experience something about the caregiver journey. Yes? All right. So let's get started, because these are stories from all walks of life, from all different kind of experiences that we're going to be talking about. We have 4 of the caregivers, of the authors here. I think what I'm going to do is just start out by saying one other little thing. When the opportunity came up, I thought, this would be cool. I mean, how many times do caregivers even give themselves permission to tell their stories? This will be awesome. Give an opportunity, I'll have fun, meet some people, and then you embark on the journey, right? And throughout, this was almost a year-long process. Throughout that process, there were moments where I turned around and I was like, what in the world was I thinking, right? Same holds true with anything in life, right? Whether you're having your first baby and you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking, right? Or your caregiver journey where you're like, I can do this, and then you get in it and you're like, uh-oh, this is a little harder than I kind of thought, right? So everything about the writing of this book, everything about the actual caregiving stories, all of it just has a universal theme of there is no playbook, there is no one size fits all, and you're going to hear a little bit of how folks kind of are navigating what their experiences are. So without further ado, let me go to our first author, Deb. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and just give a little snippet of what your chapter title was, what it was about, and then we'll go to the next question. And we will take questions at the end, so don't worry.
Hi, my name is Debbie Tynan. I started taking care of my own mom 7 years ago when she broke her hip. And at the same time, my daughter was in college. So I was wearing 2 hats because I had to constantly make choices of who I was going to take care of when. And my chapter is about raising parents. And it's been, sometimes I just go forward because I can't stop and sit and think about what I'm going to do. When my mom broke her hip, my daughter also fell out of her college dorm bed and had a traumatic brain injury.
She was in New York and I was here, and I'm pacing the hallways at the hospital waiting for the surgeon to come in to talk to me about my mom, and at the same time the neurosurgeons or the neurologists from New York were calling me, and I'm seeing the doctor from it's constant with it, you know. I'm constantly making choices, and sometimes I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. So it's been an interesting journey. It continues to this day, where I feel like I'm more of a daughter to my mother than I am a mother to my daughter. And I'm just, when I stop and think about some of my choices after I've made them, is when I'm doubting myself about, am I doing the right thing? Thank God I have a daughter who's very understanding, but at the same time I feel like I'm missing out on so much of her life. And when you're raising a child, I don't know if I should get into this now or like.
Let's hold that one for when we actually talk about the chapters. Is that cool?
Okay.
So, but awesome for Deb, first time author, published author.
First time author.
Nice.
And also first time out of the house this year.
Nice. All right, so Missy, this is Makeba,
Yes.
right? Introduce yourself.
So I'm Makeba Pease. I often call myself the uncertified nursing assistant. I've taken care of my mom since 2014. I'm her primary caregiver and her full-time support system. I am a seasoned senior project manager, 30 years experience. My motivation for writing and preparing my chapter, which I titled Living Life, Waiting for Someone to Die, is because right around year 7, I realized that I had stopped living, and had the wherewithal to understand that that's not what she would want for me. What she would want for me was to carry her along the journey, find a different balance, and live my life, and not live my life waiting for her to die. So that's kind of what I learned to do. There were some repercussions behind my making that decision, and I talk about some of the battles and family dynamics and challenges in my chapter. I'm glad I did it. I'm a first-time author. It was very cathartic for me to do it, very healing for me to do it, because I laid it out on the table, put all the emotions aside, and I just got it done. So I walk through life now with a power that says, yeah, this is where I am, this is what I do, I own it, and have a different peace after having written the chapter. So one takeaway would be for people in the fight and in the struggle, those that are not yet being cared for, exercise your power to plan. I really hope that comes across in my chapter. Just prepare and put things in place and make it a bit easier for people to care for.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you. And I'm just going to say, Makeba has one of my favorite little scenes in her chapter about her mom always loving ice cream and paying the ice cream vendor with buttons and things like that. And she had a deal with the ice cream man, right? And he would just give it to her and she would settle up at the end. But I love that story.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have Shanice.
Hi, yes. Hi everyone, my name is Shanice Karan. I had the pleasure of being the caregiver for my grandmother. I had the untraditional route. I mean, I guess caregiving is not necessarily traditional by any means, oftentimes. But after my parents passed away, at the very young age of 13, I became a caregiver for my grandparents. Specifically in the home with my grandmother. My chapter, I titled it called Bags Packed. I explore and chose to talk about, as you've heard, caregiving, it involves a lot of tough decisions. And I had to make a tough decision at a very young age, and I explore that in the chapter, what that process is like for me, especially with that being my last living immediate family member. And it was a struggle navigating that, choosing self, trying to do the right thing, keep promises. I explore what those emotions were like, hoping to provide comfort and support for those that might be in that same situation, and ultimately having to choose self, because that's something that she would have wanted me to do too. So looking forward to sharing a part of it as we go on later on throughout the day.
Nice. And she's gotta be so proud, and then she's on a shirt. Goodness. Very cool. And then we've got Karen.
Yeah, and Karen has kind of a pinball brain, so she has to have a little bit of notes, like, what's my name? My name is Karen Klink. And I'm a daughter, an advocate, and an essential caregiver for my mom, who has dementia. Her name is Cindy. She currently resides in a boarding care in Long Beach. And I just say these past 5 years have been a whirlwind of lessons, many of them painfully learned. There is this profound shift that occurs when you take care of a parent. I mentioned this to my sister who's in the audience today, that, you know, because she's a mom and I'm not a mom, you know, and I don't have any children, but like, I'm now a mom to my mom. And I love my mom fiercely. Like, we have this amazing special bond that we've always had, and now with her dementia, I often feel like I know her better than she knows herself. And we really get each other. Like, we think we're hysterical, and we really are. We have odd sense of humor that a lot of people don't get. I would say that, unfortunately, the experience of long-term care has not been a good one for us in our family. So, can't speak to Kensington, I'm sure it's wonderful enough. But you know, it's hard. We've had it in a number of places, small places, big places. The pandemic also did so much damage to my mom, but also to our family. So before COVID, I saw the shortcomings in long-term care, and then the pandemic happened, and I became a very vocal advocate. I'm loud. I'm kind of obnoxious sometimes. I'm trying to rein it in today. But I became an advocate not just for my mom, but for others that are vulnerable, the elderly, disabled, and it's been that's been my passion and purpose in life.
Nice. Very nice, very nice. And you'll find that each of these chapters offers a lot of information, right? So while Deb didn't kind of bring it up, her chapter has a whole bunch of information, like if you want to build your own manual on the person that you are giving care to, right? And she'll get more into that. Others have a more personal kind of story of what it was like to give yourself permission to even share what you're feeling, right? Karen is very big advocate on being an essential, that the role of caregiver is essential, and trying to work that through. One thing I did forget to mention, I too have a chapter in here. I was raised by a mom who was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. I became her primary caregiver, and then on top of it, because God thought it was pretty funny, I'm sure, he decided to also have my younger sister diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenia. So I was sandwiched between the two. So that's a little bit of what I write about. I have 2 memoirs published that tell the bulk of the story. The other thing I want to talk about is when I first came to California, I stayed for free as the caregiver to a woman who was 96 years old. I was 36 years old. And at 36, I thought, my life was over, what am I doing? I never intended to care for somebody. Oh, this is the only way I can live, right, by taking care of this person. She was a hoot. And I learned so much from this woman who was 96, who on her 100th birthday, we asked her, so Rose, what is it that you want for your 100th birthday? And without skipping a beat, she said, a stroke, because she was gone, right? She was so funny. I bring that up because everyone that we care for, whether they have a mental disability, a mental disorder, right? Or whether all their faculties are intact, but their body just isn't kind of working for them anymore, they're still human. And we sometimes forget that they are just actual people, right? With all the same emotions. So it's really hard to keep that in mind along with your own feelings. I remember for me, it was a lot of shame because I was not feeling the love a lot of times. It was a lot of stay silent because there's a stigma. You don't want other people to know about things. You don't want other people to pity you, right? So I applaud every one of these authors for having the courage to tell their stories. And I would like to ask each one what it was like to sign up for something like this and walk down this road and put your heart onto the page. You wanna share a little bit? Because how many of you have ever even thought about, hey, I might wanna write my story one day, or my parents' stories one day, yeah? About what happened, don't say anything naughty about me. All right? They don't need to know that. No, it's about you. You wanna go ahead?
Sure. So I was actually, I tell everybody that my life every day is Groundhog Day. And so this was really invigorating for me to be able to, the thought of not just sharing my story, but that I could help other people. That was just such a motivating factor for me, because not realizing what I have learned, if I could help other people and then, you know, guide them into cutting through the chase from what I've learned, that's what I loved. And then Paolina was also amazing,
She says that now.
holding everybody's hand. But no, it was an incredible experience, because you know, I am it was, I don't want to get into a whole other tangent again, but it's been great, and I really hope that from what I've written can help other people.
That's awesome. And
Just,
might as well keep going down
okay.
there.
So for me, it was life changing. I had wanted for a very long time to give my anger a voice, because it is frustrating. It's all encompassing. It's not this big rosy story. It takes a lot of sacrifice and patience that I never thought that I had in me, and all of that anger, frustration, fear, just needed a place to live. So I was grateful for the opportunity. Paolina was an amazing writing coach. It takes a lot of focus. You know, my first draft was a bit angry. And I had to realize, is that what I wanted to share with people? And along that journey of just her walking us through the process of this whole thing called writing, was very therapeutic, because it allowed me to place all that emotion where it really needed to be, so that I could be a mentally healthy and happy person. And I think that was just her good coaching. I honestly have to give her credit where credit is due. So I'm glad that I did it. No regrets. It's on the table. It's out there. And as people read it and talk to me, it gives the shadow a voice. So I'm glad that I'm able to do that, because it really is a shadow of a lot of emotions that you feel a little guilty about. You feel guilty about being angry about the person that took care of you. But it gives that shadow, and it gave that shadow a voice, and it gave people an avenue and a means to talk about it. So I'm glad I did it.
Nice, very nice. Any?
I hate to be redundant, but it definitely was therapeutic. Much more than I anticipated. When I saw the email come across, I clicked it and I was like, oh, I have so much going on. How am I gonna sit down and write? However, at the beginning of the year, I did say that I wanted to start journaling, or at least writing my caregiving experience. Presently, I manage a home care agency where we provide non-medical home care to seniors in their home, but also we provide personal attendant and respite services to individuals with developmental disabilities. So my experience caregiving definitely sparked that passion for me but writing specifically also was empowering because I wrote, and it took you back to, for me, it was a painful experience because I was having to let go of someone that was it for me, that was it. And after writing, it was like, wow, you endured that with so much grace and patience and love, and you're still standing strong today. It's been helpful as well. I didn't realize I was just sharing with a couple of the other authors as we waited to come in. I've had family members call me and apologize for not being there as they should have. They didn't realize, and I operated, and I just had to do what I had to do. As a caregiver, you just have to do what you have to do, whether you get the help or not, you figure it out. But to hear that from family, I didn't realize I needed to hear that. I chalked it up to they have their own lives. My mom was the only child, I was the only child, so it's solely, if I didn't do it, who would, right? But to hear that they apologized, that they weren't there to help support me, has been one of the most healing parts of this journey, the writing.
Wow, that's huge, huge. So a lot of times we don't get the support, right? So my brother, who I love, we have a great relationship, but when I raised my hand and was like, I'm drowning, his response was, oh, don't be a martyr. That's why you're living there for free. Like, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, quiet. So that's awesome, very awesome. And Karen?
Well, it was not an easy experience for me, but it was worth it. And to get our story out and to work alongside all these other people, like I just have to say, like I just read Debbie's chapter, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's like a manual in here. Like, why didn't I read this before? Like, it was like, you know, all of their stories are like truly amazing. I am not a writer. I hadn't written. I don't know why I signed up, but I did. And once I did, I'm like, I'm not a quitter, right? I really enjoyed the process before we started writing my story. Like, she gave us like writing assignments, and I'm like, oh, these are cool. I like these. I can be very creative. And when I sat down to write the story, man, you know, there was one point where it was so painful and so traumatic for me that I actually sent an email to Paolina and said, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can finish this, right? And, you know, but, you know, I am a doer, and I really like to get things done. And so I continue to persevere, but, you know, there were things that happened in the last couple of years or so that were so painful and so traumatic to me that I was ready to put pen to paper. I don't know if I am now. Hopefully I will be. But this was a fantastic start, and once I was able to do that, like, I did feel like I could do other things. Like, I went on to work to have a speech, do a speech at a major medical conference a couple months ago, and like, I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't done this first.
Wow, that's awesome, that's awesome. So a couple things I just want to underscore here. Writing is therapy, it always has been for me. Writing is empowering. And the third thing, writing is a way to actually have whatever you are experiencing or whatever you have gone through, to give it greater meaning, right? There are so many times where I thought to myself, there is no way that I ended up with two people, both paranoid schizophrenics, that I'm stuck here. There's no way without there being some other meaning. Putting it on the page not only helps heal you, but you'll be surprised the number of people that are like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. That's exactly how I feel. So if you're even thinking about giving it a shot, just try, right? Tomorrow's gonna come anyway. Next year's gonna come anyway. Start jotting down what is going on. Even if no one sees it, you will know, right? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question to all of our caregivers out there that are
Yes.
going to listen to this and want to be able to proceed and do this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you provide us that we can attach with a copy of this webinar any writing prompts,
Oh,
you know, because I'm
absolutely.
sitting here thinking, I'm looking at all of you, and I'm gonna bawl my eyes out, but all of your journeys are so special. But how do you start, you know,
Yeah.
I'd love to write my journey, but, you know, I can't really write, and
Yeah.
so, you know, if you could provide prompts, that'd be
I
great.
promise you, I will send you a bunch of things, right, that people can just immediately take action on. One thing, stop talking to yourself in the way that you're talking to yourself. The more that we say, I can't do this, I can't do, the universe is like, okie dokie,
Yeah.
you can't, right? The more that I say, I am so fat, the universe is like, here's another 10 pounds, right? I mean, so first, start talking to yourselves a little bit differently, right? I go through a program where it's a 6-week kind of thing. And the very first week, we call it Think Like a Shrink, right? You've got to vomit all that stuff out. That is number one. So that's the first thing, but I will give you other materials that people can just follow along, yeah? Okay, perfect. So now, how about this? Would you like to hear just a little bit from everybody's kind of chapter? They'll maybe read something, or, I mean, Deb, if you want to read something, that's cool, or if you want to just kind of go over, these are some of the things in my manual.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll just speak from the heart about what I wrote about and my experience. So, raising parents is not the same as raising a child. When you are raising a normal, healthy child, there are so many great milestones, and it's all towards leading independence. Whether it's holding their own bottle or feeding themselves or crawling, those are all big milestones. With parents, what makes it hard is that there's no progress anymore. Excuse me. There's no progress anymore. Oh, it steps backwards. So for me, and sometimes my mother calls me the warden, because I don't give up on her, and I won't let her give up either. But I just want the status quo. I don't want the backwards, 2 steps backwards. It doesn't even have to be 1 step forward. It can be just this, let's just keep things as they are. And again, when I compare that to raising a child, it's a different kind of emotion because you are just so elated with every little step they take forward. And with parents, it's a completely different set of emotions.
And yet, I'm gonna interrupt you, because with as much emotion and sadness that comes with it, your mom is a hoot. Tell them the whole George Clooney thing with the...
So my mom has a thing for George Clooney, big time. And
are you hearing this, George? If he sees this video, yeah.
She wasn't listening to the physical therapists we had at the house. They would say, you know, keep your eye on the center of the walker, and there was a sticker there, and I was like, and it just wasn't working. And so I printed out a shot of a picture of George Clooney, one of his in his younger days, and I cut it out and I taped it on the walker, and I was really excited because I thought, oh, this is gonna motivate her. And my mother's very funny, and she looks at it, and she looked at me, she was very disappointed, and I was like, oh no, what about, she said, there's not a picture of me next to him. So I was like, oh God. So I went and I'm like looking for good pictures of her, and I printed out a picture of my mom, and then I taped it on. So now she's nuzzled into his neck. And then we have more photos in folders on her, on her tray table at home. And then a friend gave her a picture. She actually contacted Clooney's office, and they wouldn't sign a photo, but they sent it to her. that's framed. Now she wants a standee of him. But so I'm gonna have to do that, like with one of her, you know, with a picture of my mom as well. So that's on the to-do list. But she talks about George all the time, and it, you know, every night HBO Max has ER. The entire show on, but he's only through season 5, which is really inconvenient for us. So we have to it's like I've memorized all the lines already, and I know we have to start over every 5th season, or when the 5th season ends. And then it's funny because this was a couple years ago. We were in the kitchen, and I was looking through the guide to try to find something for her to watch, and there's a program called Sex Sent Me to the ER. And she's like, oh, let's watch that. And I'm like, okay. So I won't describe to you what these episodes are about, but I think in her mind, she thought it was a spin-off. Because she was watching everything that, you know. But it's, so, you know, it's hard because, you know, she doesn't have the kind of quality of life, and so we try to do as much for her as we can. I did create in the very beginning a manual of kind of a how-to to take care of my mom, which was I wanted things to just kind of stay the same for her, just in case something happens to me. It's now like over 90 pages. I'm constantly updating the page with her prescriptions. It has all of her doctors. It has exercises. I have menus because she's got dysphagia, so she can't have a lot of foods where she can choose. So I have recipes in there. I have different diagnoses. I have the power of attorney. There's just, I think of things like, and I'm thinking, why didn't I think of putting that in before? But things will come to me, and I just added it. And then every day I keep kind of a medical journal for her, you know, what her vitals are, what she had to eat, what she's in the, you know, how she was feeling. If a therapist came, just stuff so that when the doctors would call and they'd want information, I had it, because it's just too much in your head to remember all the, you know, specific details. And we just, you know, we try to make life as fun as possible for my mom. And there's, I'll get into later on about, you know, what's current that's not included in the chapter. But it's been very interesting because I have learned that I'm talking to her as a parent sometimes, as like I'm her parent. And I'm making decisions for her, like what clothes to buy for her and what she's gonna wear. And you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, my mom used to get her hair done every week. And I was explaining that everything was closed and you know, nothing was open. And she just looked at me and she said, I'm not dying having a bad hair day. And I was like, oh God. So we were able to like find, you know, the colorist who did her hair, my mother's hair, in her garage, you know, during the pandemic, and found somebody else who was cutting hair at her house outside. And so and my mother's not a particularly vain woman. She just made her feel good. And I realized that once a week trip to the beauty shop was a normal routine for her, because so much of her normal life was gone. So many friends had died. Her bridge games were gone. The book clubs she wasn't going to anymore because her friends weren't there. And it's just because as much as I thought it was ridiculous for her to get her hair done every week when she wasn't going anywhere, that was part of a routine that she needed.
And there's so much more in her chapter, and I just wanna make sure everybody gets a little snippet, and then we'll come back, yeah?
My title was Living Life Waiting for Someone to Die. And I had a lot of questions from a lot of people that looked from the outside in, said, why? Why have you put your life on hold to take care of your mom? Well, it wasn't by choice. So really what my chapter attempted to detail are some of the reasons why, and how I traveled along her milestones, and how the disease we know as dementia progresses, and some of the funny times and the hard times. Funny times being, me watching her watch the door thinking that she was gonna take the keys and drive, and I'm like, she's still kind of conscious and has some cognitive abilities and decisions, and I'm going, oh God, how am I gonna keep her from not taking a car that belongs to her? And she's like, these are my damn keys, and I'm like, I'm fully aware of that, but you don't know where you're going, right? So just, there's funny times like that in the book where I talk about how I'm catch her getting up and I'm running to try to get dressed to try to offer her, well, I'll go with you, and she's like, well, whatever, I guess you can go, so, but really I'm protecting her, but I'm bothering her. Those were the fun times, and just understanding kind of the progression of the disease, and her not thinking and understanding that buttons aren't quarters to pay for the ice cream truck. But she lived in the neighborhood for 20-30 years, so the guy, when I offered to pay him, very kindly and politely told me, I've driven this ice cream route for 30 years. I know your mom. She can pretty much have anything she wants. So and again, just some of those great milestones. There's a scene where I talk about why I knew that I would be with my mom to the end, and I'm 10 years in, and I'm okay with it. I've settled with that. It was a scene that was really heartbreaking for me and hard to write about, but she was in the hospital for the 4th time, and I walked into the room and she begged me like a screaming kid, please take me home. I promise I'll be good. And that was really heart-wrenching and hard for me to see dementia overtake my superhero. I coined her that term. My mom was a superhero who raised 6 children solo, and not by choice. She was 26 and widowed with 3 on the floor and 1 in her stomach. She survived that. She later met my dad and had 2 other children, me and my brother, but never had the courage to marry again. I didn't write about that in the book. I kind of regret that I didn't put it in there. But when you understand where she comes from, how do you not support somebody like that? So I'm in it for the long haul. She'll be 90 in July. And I talk about that in my book as well. At some point I realized that I just needed to live my life. And I did not have her expiration date, and I didn't know mine. So I just needed to live and to take her as part of my life journey and live with her and keep her as comfortable as I can. If I could have afforded the level of care that I want her to have, which is someone loving her the way that I love her and taking care of her to the standard that I keep her, I would gladly place her, but I wasn't born with those kinds of finances. So I'm in it to win it. And at the end of the day, all I want is for God to say I did a good job. I've learned to care less about what the peanut gallery says, what the siblings say. Unless you're gonna walk in my shoes for 365 days, I've closed the door on outsiders. So.
And like I've told you, Makeba, I think this chapter is just the beginning of more for you, for sure.
I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
And I'd love to explore and have a conversation when we're done here about the sibling thing. I have kind of a similar situation with my brother who lives in Taos, New Mexico. We just agree that every 6 months I'm gonna call and yell at you, but we still love each other and we still do. So I'd love to talk about that. I love the fact that you said you just close the door and you have a job to do.
Yeah,
it's really, really remarkable.
I talked about it. I have a whole different dynamic of the level of, I'm not sure. I've learned with my siblings, it's not my job to fix them. I have the task at hand, and nobody is volunteering to do this sacrificial job of taking care of our mother, which they constantly remind me, it's our. I'm like, oh, where's the our in the team? I don't see an our in the team, but it's a completely different dynamic. But I have learned through some very hard lessons that you have to shut the peanut gallery out and the naysayers out. Find your village. Family are the people that surround you, and everybody else is just related by blood. I live by that creed now. So.
And if I may say so, I think you all of you are blessed because you were able to take care of your loved one. I'd give my arms and legs to be able to care for my mom, but my mom was taken fast. I didn't even get the chance to care for her. And seeing that you guys were able to do that for your mom and your loved ones, your parents, for me, that's a blessing.
That's beautiful, that's beautiful. I wanna say one thing to that. I agree with you, right? My mother, who was a paranoid schizophrenic and then lived until her mid-80s, that was a challenge to see her deteriorate. That was tough. My father was laughing one minute, died of a massive heart attack in the next second. That was tough, right? So part of me has struggled with this question of which one's easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which one's more of the blessing, that they go right away and you don't have to see them kind of deteriorate, or that you have them for a long time and you have that time with them. I don't know, but thank you for saying that, because that means a lot. So
But I think it works both ways. Like,
of course,
maybe for your loved one, it's better because it's fast and quick.
yeah.
But for me, I'm being selfish here. I would have rather, I wouldn't want my mom to suffer, but
Had more time.
had more time
right?
with her, able to say goodbye to her,
Yeah,
care for her.
yeah. I hope everyone walks away from this with one word in their mind, and that is selfish. Be selfish in this life, because the more that you put your oxygen mask on first, the better not only you are, but those around you,
Yes.
right? Selfish is not a bad word. So sorry, as I'm like, blah, 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 I'm only gonna say one more thing, blah, 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 one more thing, blah, 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 go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to share an excerpt from my chapter, but you all let me right into it. I was faced with the same situation. My mother was taking a massive heart attack suddenly in her sleep. My grandmother had to discover her only child and now be told that you have 6 months to live. That experience of grieving my mom suddenly, but now I'm grieving every day the idea of, we don't know the exact expiration date, but I know it's coming. That was a journey.
And how old were you?
When my grandmother, ultimately when she passed, I was 19. But I started my caregiving journey the day my mom closed her eyes, because my grandparents had health challenges that required us to navigate the healthcare system. And then to be told that a brain tumor that wasn't supposed to come back, now it's returned. We tried the radiation, and then it went away, but it came back again. And to have my grandmother have that conversation with me of, I don't want to do another brain surgery. I had to understand that, the risk of, she would go in there, the doctors already told us she would go in, the likelihood of her coming out, they couldn't give us that. So we went ahead and went with the journey of in-home hospice, and her and I, as Makeba was saying, family is not, it's the people around you. I had people that loved my mother, that loved my grandmother, that loved me, to come in and support me through that with caring for her. But those tough decisions that had to be made fell upon me. And I just want, I feel like if I had something as such, to know that the feelings that I was feeling were normal. You battle with yourself, like, well, I shouldn't feel this way. But no, it's okay to feel that way. And I just want to share a part in the chapter where I battled those different emotions. So I said upon enrolling grandma in hospice, we were made aware that she is eligible to receive up to 5 days of respite care. This short-term inpatient care is provided to relieve family or other caregivers of their caregiving duties. Not much thought had been given to exploring this option prior. However, this might be the most appropriate time. Here we are, I'm up all night. I haven't slept probably in about 3 weeks consistently because she was starting to decline. Amidst the deafening silence, a flood of thoughts surged through my head, each one tugging at my heart forcefully. The weight of the decision to place her in a facility bore down heavily upon me. I'm not ready to let go, I whispered to myself, fearing the separation, unsure if I would bear to see her leave our home. Moreover, the feeling in the pit of my stomach was that once she left, she would not return. She can't give up on me or life now, I pleaded with God, seeking a glimmer of hope that her spirit would endure and that we would defy the odds together. The conflicting emotions tore at my soul. I don't want her to suffer, I murmured, my heart aching at the thought of her enduring any type of pain. Grandma already withstood 2 complex brain surgeries, a heart attack, a series of radiation treatment, and nearly a dozen grand mal seizures over the past 4 years. I could not imagine her petite body being able to handle much more. Then there's the unpleasant psychological pain she's experienced as she's verbally expressed her frustration with the decline in energy and independence over the past few months. This graceful and faithful servant of God was undeserving of any type of pain or suffering. But another grief cycle awaits. A voice warned, reminding me of the inevitable heartbreak that would follow this difficult choice. My mother's untimely death when I was 13 was life-altering, face-shaking, and debilitating. For nearly a year, each day when the clock struck 9:28, I would sob uncontrollably, replaying the moment the paramedics pronounced her deceased. It was the fervent prayers and discernment of my grandmother that kept me on the straight and narrow. She knew by looking at me when it was just one of those moments or just one of those days, and knew exactly what to say or do. It could be a thoughtful card with a handwritten note full of encouraging words I would unexpectedly discover on my nightstand, or a suggested trip to get some ice cream. Although I lost my mother physically, Grandma's love tremendously filled the gap, and I continue to receive the nurturing love of a mother. How will I withstand the loss of a mother twice? Respite would mean she would go into a nursing facility. I realized with the pang of guilt that the promise I once made to her at home, to keep her at home, might not be fulfilled. Doubts crept in like shadows whispering, what if they don't treat her right? Or she believes I've given up on her. An unbearable fear. Yet a flicker of self-preservation stirred within me. A break would give me time to restore order to the house, get the carpet clean, deep clean, catch up on some laundry, even a nap, change some bedding, what was once the every Saturday morning routine. A good night of uninterrupted sleep I reasoned, seeking a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. She cannot die in this house. The haunting memory of my mother passing surged back, fueling a determination to protect her from the same fate. I am pulled in opposite directions, grappling with love, responsibility, and the need to find a balance that would safeguard her well-being while preserving my own.
Thank you. And then Karen.
And then came Karen. You know, what you guys all shared brought up a lot. Like, you know, I can't talk about the sibling issue because my sibling's in the room.
We'll talk later. I can step out.
But
Also, I'm a good sibling. I do help.
yes, she does.
And I have a disabled child, so you know, I get a
She
little-
does. So the other thing was that we also have experience that, you know, that my dad was my mom's caregiver, and he, you know, and she was supposed to go first, and he was supposed to take care of her, and he dropped dead in the kitchen while pouring morning coffee. I shared that in my book. Like that's what happened, right? And then it was thrust on us, you know, like, and like just like wow. And when I started this, I talked to Linda about this earlier, like there was no talk about caregiving and caregivers and support and like all this stuff. It just wasn't there. And I said, like, I didn't know I was a caregiver. I didn't know that's what I was. And even though my mom is in a facility, like I said this, I am still a caregiver. I am on 24/7. I put out fires constantly with my own calling, the facility, the insurance, the doctors, you know, the coordinating of all this is a full-time job. And I'm so glad that there was more attention paid now. Like there's national organizations like the National Alliance for Caregivers. There's a group that I love, which is called Daughterhood, that's online. There's the USC has a local caregiver research center, which is where we met Paolina from. So there's a lot more resources now. I'm just going to read a short excerpt. Maybe this will lighten things up a little. I don't know. We'll see. Mom called me. I can't find my panties. This is a constant cry to the point that my sisters and I called it the ongoing case of the missing panties. This went on whether we were permitted in the facility or not. We keep our panties in the top drawer of the dresser. Can you please put all her panties in the top drawer of her dresser and let her know that? I was nice the first time I asked the staff, but no matter how often I asked, Mom's panties would be strewn in various different drawers, sometimes in her closet, sometimes in her bedstand. It may seem like a silly need, but it isn't. And geez, doesn't everyone put their panties in the top drawer of the dresser? I took an informal poll, and the answer was a resounding yes. Yep, everyone responded in the affirmative. After 2 years of trying to get her panties in the top drawer of the laundry people just couldn't seem to figure this out, and the housekeepers and caregivers said it wasn't their job. So we just gave up. Sometimes there weren't any panties at all. Every few months, several of them would go mysteriously missing. And we would get that phone call, like, your mom needs more panties. Like, you almost had to laugh. Like, I was some terrible daughter that didn't believe in underwear for her mother. I mean, if you can't do underwear, I couldn't imagine them managing the hard stuff.
That was great. And so true, right? So let's do this only because of time. Before we get to kind of like, here's my takeaway, right? The thing I want you to take away from my chapter. Maybe we take a minute and do some Q&A so that we have time to take the questions if there are. Yeah.
Does your book have anything to do with any male people in your family that helped out even a little bit?
So I will say, this same brother who called me the martyr, in the end, because long story short, to save myself, I saw an opportunity and I escaped. I left Chicago and came out to LA. Somebody had to pick up the slack. My brother is the one who actually moved in with my mom, gave up what he was going to be doing, and one of the stories my brother told me was, here was my mom. At this point, she had gotten breast cancer and had a mastectomy on top of everything else, and she wasn't able any longer to even like put on her own panties, and she was mortified because my brother had to actually put her underwear on, had to actually clean her up. And I remember my brother, I was like, well, what did you say? That must have been horrible. And he said, Mom, I've seen it before. I came out of there. So it was like just a big old kind of joke. What I know to be true is this. If you are the one who's always stepping up to plate, right? That's wonderful. It's taxing on you. And I have learned it sometimes might rob others of the opportunity to step up to the plate because they have to, right? And sometimes if there's no other choice and they have to, they will. And it is amazing because he never thought he was gonna be in that. And we also do have, we have a male author, Tony. So you might want to look this up. There's a guy in the book who authored a chapter. His name is Tony Luciani, and he's quite famous actually. He came to us from Deb, a buddy of Deb's, and he took photos of his aging mom. He's an artist, and when he was taking the photos, Mom would like photobomb him, and it became an entire series. And you can go and take a look at these photos. I'm not saying that that men, we were even talking about this earlier, it seems that females are the ones who step up to the plate more often, right? And they take the lion's share, correct? Yeah. And, you know, part of that, I think, is just history. Females are the ones who just kind of take it on.
It's just genetic.
It's genetic, yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
I just wondered if there was such a thing as a man that helped anybody in here.
Yeah, I do think I mean, you know what, before even my dad passed away, he was the primary caregiver for my mom and her mental illness.
It has happened with
So
you
they are
twice,
there,
but
right.
Anybody else had any help from a sibling or a guy?
From siblings,
Yeah.
from guys, I mean, you guys, I mean, some of the stories really go into depth on the sibling challenges, right?
I will say that my husband is a phenomenal caregiver to our disabled son.
Nice.
He's like,
Yeah.
he's got 1,000 times more patience than I do. So in that regard, it's different, but he's an incredible caregiver.
And I think something that someone said, now I'm losing track, but you said it, you said you moved and your brother had to step up. So I think a lot of times if they have to step up, but we're like, I got this. I mean, but I agree with you, and I think we need to do more thoughtful study or have thoughtful conversations about the male caregiver, because I do think there's a lot of male caregivers out there taking care of their spouses.
Yes.
And I think they're hiding in their homes and we just don't know it, because they think, you know, they don't like to ask for directions and they don't want help.
Yeah.
So,
I just wondered if anybody else can help.
I would add, like, we don't have any, you know, her husband is a great caregiver, but the, you know, the group that I belong to, Daughterhood, because most caregivers are females, so that's what it's called, and so there's been some discussion as to, like, you know, the men are like, well, what about us? Which, you know, makes sense, but it doesn't exclude them, right? You're right, it's not out there in prevalence much.
And you're asking the question because you personally are dealing with some of this stuff? Yeah, it's you and they're not stepping up, yeah. You know, one of the things that I did do was I had to put together a document that listed out what they would have to pay if we hired somebody. And suddenly it was a light bulb for them on what they were getting. It might, I don't know if you've tried it, but
No, it's a past thing now.
Oh, it's a
But I mean,
past
for
thing.
10 years, there was
nothing, yeah. And you know what, they're just not I finally came to the understanding, they are not in that, they're not in a place to even be able to do that. I mean, reality wise, right? Whether or not I like it, they're not there, yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I think the reality is, on the caregiving side, it's easier said than done. And a lot of people from the outside, I've learned to calmly say, it's not easy, I just make it look that way. And I make it look that way because you just own it. It's like I could spend my energy whining and complaining and being combative and on the phone and calling, but in the grand scheme of time and consideration of my own mental health, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I found my village and I utilize my village, because when I call my village and say, hey, I need help, my village shows up. I don't have a banter back and forth. You know, your sillies are more likely to tell you, jump in the lake, get over it, right? If somebody is part of your village is just there for you. Whether they're paid or volunteers or friends, we haven't gotten to the takeaway, but the takeaway is to find your village and use your village. They are out there. People, you'd be surprised that I had a doctor, my mother's in hospice. Her volunteer is a retired doctor. Couldn't be more blessed than that. And that's just me opening up to allow the village to come in. You know, once I stopped living kind of in secrecy and trying to be the gladiator and, you know, and doing it all, you know, I'm very private, so I was out a lot of people in my house, I don't want to do that, right? But I learned to make the adjustment because my village doesn't come from the inside, it comes from the outside. And I've learned to just embrace the village and again, the surrounding, and it is a mantra, and I play it over and over again in my head and for other people to help them realize Your family is your family by birth. And though you can't do anything about that. You can't erase them. You can't cut them off. They're gonna be part of your life, whether you like it or not. You know, but you don't have to take on all of their crap. You know, you don't have to fix them. You know, I had enough time fixing myself in the journey. You have to go do what I did, do the work, go fix yourself. And I've learned to be selfish that way. It's funny, after I wrote this book, I let so much go. And immediately became a little selfish in everybody else's eyes and space. But remarkably, my career returned, my relationship with my son got different, my relationship with my mom got different. I still don't sleep at night because I'm the caregiver 24/7, but I feel like I'm finally living my life and I'm no longer living waiting for her to die. And it sounds like such a harsh title. A lot of people are like, oh, why'd you do that? I'm like, because I said the thing that so many people are not willing to say out loud. You know, when people get sick, the first thing people, oh my God, they're gonna die. And they go and they switch the mode of, I'm caring, but the wait is that you're waiting for it to end. And you don't have that date. You don't have that time. My mother buried 2 of her sons. Both of her sons preceded her, and she's still here. So life has taught me, don't live your life waiting for somebody to die. Just live your life. You do what you do. Your mother that maybe wanted 1 child, you ended up with 6. You work it out. I want to go on vacation. You figure out how to take all 6. I want to go on vacation. I figure I was going to care for my mom. Who in the village is willing to step up? I have a trip planned to Italy. I don't quite know who's going to take care of it, but my village, I've notified everybody in my village. This is what I have to do. And everybody's raising their hand. I'll do it. What days do you need? Well, let's work it out. And none of them are my family.
Wow, that was awesome.
I just want to emphasize for our audience today, so many people think their village is their family. And so they think, you know, I don't have a village. And they kind of, you know, I think what you said today is so important. There are so many resources, especially in LA County, to be a part of your village. It could be a volunteer. It could be somebody in the community. I mean, it doesn't have to be your family. And I think that's so important.
I tell people, build your village.
Yeah, I have a sponsor who said, you know, you go to where the love is, and like, not that there's not love in your family, but it's the activity, it's the doing, it's the, you know, who's gonna fulfill that need that you have, you know. So like, yeah, my husband loves me, but he's not the one I go to for help, you know. So I know where to go, where that love is, where that caring is.
Absolutely. I was the only child. My mom was the only child. So it was family ties. It was just me. She had siblings, but they were older. And it was the people that loved my mother. My grandmother worked at the library for over 30 years. So she had patrons all throughout the community. You would come to our home. Our house was you needed a hot meal. She was there to prepare it. We had a garden. So here you go. Here's some peppers. Here's some greens. And when the time came, it was beautiful for me to be able to see her, to receive the love from all the people that she poured love into. I mean, one of my teachers that she basically adopted as her daughter, she came in and moved in to help me care for her. I had friends that came in and moved in, church family that came in. The mailman was coming bringing cases of water. I mean, it literally was the community.
You find out who your real friends are when you are in trouble. People step up.
But you can also ask.
You can also ask, and it was very hard for me. It was very hard to ask.
And so I had a shrink, a therapist, for over a decade, and she finally one day said to me, Paolina, when are you gonna stop wishing for a better past? Because it ain't never gonna happen. And the minute that you let go of what you think something ought to be like, and you move forward in a different direction, things get easier, right? So, yeah. Do we have any other questions? Yep.
just curious to find out for those of you who actually did the care, because I'm wondering when the time comes when I have to. I'm very squeamish with, like, you know, body fluids, blood, and all those. How do you overcome that? Like, because you have to. I mean, I may not have the resources to be in assisted living like where I am at, but I mean, how do you do it?
It's love, and you do what you have to do. You ignore that.
All those things that don't think you can do, that you would never do, right?
You find yourself doing it.
You find yourself doing it, and then it's just
It's,
becomes
you know, it's survival skills and coping skills, and
I wrote about that in my chapter a bit.
Oh, you
My
did?
mom
Okay.
had COVID, and I got a glimpse of what the end might look like. Like, again, I say that in my chapter as well. I don't have her expiration date and I don't have mine. But COVID gave me a glimpse of what that might be like, and I'm on the fence. I have to honestly say out loud, and I've just learned to live out loud, that I'm not quite sure I'm ready to be part of that journey. I know that when the time comes, if I'm given the option and the opportunity, I'm not sure if I want to be part of that. And I've given myself permission to opt out on that. If that's the choice, and I'm given that choice of whether I have to stand there or not, today I have to say I'll opt out without regret, remorse, or fear of anybody judging what they might think. I've just learned to live my own truth and not let the peanut gallery enter my thought process. You know, today I say I don't want to be part of it. When it actually happens, I might be able to be brave enough to be there. But if it's anything like what I saw with COVID, I choose not to let that be my last memory.
Good to know. Thank
That's
you.
so strong.
Yeah.
Any more questions? We'll go to our little takeaways. Oh, there's one more. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I know that you guys had to have had moments where you were crying and trying to give up. How did you overcome that? Did you go to the side and kind of just cry it out and then go back in there and just do what you had to do?
Faith. I have learned to have a different level of prayer, and ask from God. I truly, if I can just, I've learned to pray different.
So for me, as good of a caregiver as I was, right, I sucked. And what I mean by that is I nearly lost myself in the whole process, to the point where I had mapped out, and I'm just gonna say it out loud and everybody's gonna probably run from the room, but I had mapped out a murder-suicide kind of scenario. By the grace of God, it didn't happen, very serendipitously, but the point being, silence suffocates. And if you keep it down and you don't talk to other people and you don't raise your hand and you don't say, I need help, and you don't remove yourself from the situation, you will drown. And that was my experience. So I did not find God until way later, because I couldn't see anything. I was that underwater.
I lose it daily and cry and scream, and I'm not very great. I don't do it very gracefully. But then I put it aside, and you know, I just do it, and because you know, it became like a cause for me that it wasn't just my mom. It makes it easier in a way, but it makes it harder in a way. Because it's really hard. Somebody told me, like, you can't be a daughter and an advocate.
Right.
Like, you know, except for, like, I do it all the time. That's why maybe I don't do it so well. But it's very difficult to draw the line, and I don't, like, you know, I've had plenty of issues, and not with my mom, you know, this, you know, I have a thing about the system, and, you know, but I'm about to pass a bill that's gonna allow essential caregivers in during public health emergencies, so, I'm pretty proud.
That's fabulous.
You're giving it greater meaning, that's, right?
You know, I work at Kensington, and I was an LCP care partner, and, you know, I like to think that I was good at what I was doing. But when my father passed away, I brought my mom to it with me. Sorry. And I can see the changes right now with her. And she's in the denial stage. So you would think, oh, it should be easy because you've done it, you've worked the field, but it's not. It really isn't.
And you know, let me say, there are tons of organizations now, right, that offer resources. The Los Angeles Family Caregiver Support Center, it's under USC's umbrella.
Yes.
You can go to the website. One of the things that they have up there has to do with ambiguous loss, right? So the person's still there, but not the person that you grew up with. You might find that super helpful because there are a lot of things that you may not have thought of that might help you in your own caregiver journey. So I really, really recommend to anyone to go to the LACRC website and take a look at what they offer for free. And if you want, there's a button there that's called Care Nav. You can click on the button, self-identify, so you can put in the stuff that you're dealing with, whatever it is. It does two things. One, it immediately spits back to you resources you can immediately use, right? And then in like 48 hours or maybe a little after, you will get a phone call from a live person who will talk to you more and find out what other tailored things are available to you, usually 99% of the time at no cost. So definitely worth tapping into.
I am a proud product of USC's mental health resources. Don't know how I got there, but I know right before when COVID hit, I had my own health crisis, and I didn't realize how burdened. I learned to give these words, you know, when you understand something, you kind of know where to put it. It helps you cope a lot. But I've become a huge advocate of mental health, to let people know that therapy is a good thing. In the Black and brown community, it is still very much frowned on to get mental health care. And mental health is a necessary part of life. If you are dealing with caring for anyone and living your own life, you have to protect your mental health. I am grateful for the resources that USC had. They are in every county. I moved from LA to San Bernardino County and immediately got looped in. And how I kind of came to that realization of therapy is during that COVID crisis. I ended up having a 5-centimeter tumor in my right side. I had to have a thyroidectomy in the middle of COVID, not knowing what I was gonna do. Siblings had tapped out. They didn't want to come to the house because of COVID. That was not the time to place a parent in a care facility of any kind. I think 90% of the people that were in any kind of care facility died during COVID. So I'm faced with that and my own health crisis. And I got a call from SC because I was looped in and I had taken a course and they called to check. I lost it. And it was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I have cancer. I didn't know what was going on. I completely lost it. And they stepped up in a major way. Hilarity for Charity stepped up. They gave me not hospice, but respite, which was a godsend in the time of need. And they just kind of wrapped around me and helped me understand, you know, you're just burdened. You're not suicidal, you're not crazy, you're not mean, you're none of these things. It just kind of helped me mentally compartmentalize everything that I was feeling and helped me understand how to utilize resources. And I would say utilize those resources and open up and get those things that will help you mentally cope, because human mind can only take so much. And if you don't learn to decompress and to let go of things, it will take you over. And I think Paolina was saying that a great percentage of caregivers perish before the people that they care for. And we just have to learn. We have to learn as a society to do better and open up to the thought of mental health.
Thank you.